We always thought they'd come from the sky. The invasion, the first contact, whatever you want to call it, we thought it would come from above. Hollywood told us to look to the stars. Telescopes scanned the skies for anomalies. Radio signals reached out to distant galaxies. We believed we were ready, but we were looking in the wrong direction all along. We should have been looking down. This is the story of what I found beneath us, the unspeakable truth buried miles under the Earth's crust. A story about how humanity brought this upon itself. A story about a cult, their portal, and the beings they called their overlords. My name is Ethan Carter. I was an investigative journalist chasing urban legends, government conspiracies, and the kind of stories people dismissed as crackpot theories. But nothing could have prepared me for this. What started as another routine investigation became a descent into terror, and by the time I understood what was happening, it was too late. It all started with a tip. 3 weeks ago, I got an email. No subject line, no signature, just a single sentence. They're building something underground, something big. Look into it. Attached was a map. It was an old blueprint of an abandoned subway system beneath the city. At first, I thought it was just another wild goose chase. Urban explorers had been digging around the old tunnels for decades, and rumors of secret experiments and government facilities were nothing new. But something about that message stuck with me. And so, armed with a flashlight, a notebook, and a healthy dose of skepticism, I found myself wandering through the forgotten guts of the city, following the map. The deeper I went, the stranger things became. The air was damp and metallic, and the tunnels felt too silent, like the world above had been swallowed whole. At first, I found the usual signs of urban decay: graffiti, trash, remnants of homeless camps. But then I stumbled across something off. Symbols. They were carved into the walls, jagged and alien, glowing faintly in the dark like phosphorescent moss. At first, I thought they might be old gang signs, but they didn't match any language or style I'd ever seen. They were intricate, almost ritualistic. I ran my fingers over one of them, feeling the grooves, and I swear, for a moment, the wall felt warm to the touch, as if it were alive. And then I heard it, a low hum, almost imperceptible, coming from deeper in the tunnel. It wasn't machinery, it was organic, like the growl of something enormous and asleep. I should have turned back then. I should have left and written the whole thing off as another dead-end lead. But curiosity has always been my downfall. The map led me to a massive iron door. It didn't belong down there, it was too modern, too deliberate. Someone had built this recently, and they didn't want anyone finding it. The door was locked, but the padlock was rusted and brittle. A few swings of my crowbar and it snapped open. What I found on the other side, it was a cavern. No, a cathedral. The walls stretched high into darkness, disappearing into shadows. The floor was lined with the same glowing symbols I'd seen in the tunnels, but here they formed intricate patterns, spiraling toward the center of the room. And in the middle of it all was the machine. It was enormous, a twisted amalgamation of steel and stone, humming with an otherworldly energy. Tubes and wires snaked out from its base, connecting it to generators and strange, pulsing crystals that didn't look like anything from Earth. The air around it felt wrong, thick, heavy, charged with something I couldn't explain. That's when I saw them, the cultists. They were standing in a circle around the machine, dressed in robes that shimmered like oil on water. Their faces were hidden by masks, distorted, grotesque depictions of human features, as if a child had tried to sculpt a face out of wax and melted it. They were chanting. I couldn't understand the words. It sounded like a language that didn't belong in this world. But there was power in it, a vibration that rattled my teeth and made my skin crawl. I hid in the shadows, watching as one of them stepped forward. He was holding something, a book, ancient and weathered, its pages filled with the same alien symbols carved into the walls. He raised it above his head, and the chanting grew louder, more frenzied. And then the machine came alive. The hum became a roar, and a blinding light erupted from its core. The ground shook, and I felt a heat so intense it was like standing on the edge of a volcano. A rift began to form above the machine, a tear in reality itself, rippling and churning like liquid fire. That's when I realized what they were doing. They weren't building a machine. They were building a portal. I don't remember running. I don't remember how I got back to the surface. My legs must have carried me on pure instinct, but my mind was fractured, shattered by what I'd witnessed. I remember the sound, though. I'll never forget that sound. It wasn't just a noise, it was a violation. A piercing shriek that didn't just burrow into your ears, but into your thoughts, into the very foundation of who you are. It clawed at my mind, whispering things I couldn't comprehend, as though it was unmaking me from the inside out. By the time I made it back to my apartment, I wasn't sure if I was awake or dreaming. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I stared at the wall for hours, replaying the scene over and over in my head. The light, the machine, the portal opening, the cultists chanting, and that shape I'd glimpsed in the rift. No, not a shape. Shapes, countless of them, shifting and colliding, as if the beings that lived on the other side weren't bound by the same laws of reality we were. They weren't meant to be seen by human eyes. I drank until I passed out that night, hoping to forget. But the dreams came. Dreams of something ancient and vast stirring beneath the earth. Dreams of mouths that never stopped screaming. Dreams of countless eyes watching me, judging me. The next morning, I woke up drenched in sweat and decided to investigate. I had to know what I'd stumbled into. I spent days researching, diving into every archive I could find. Libraries, online forums, old conspiracy theory websites. Most of it was dead ends or paranoid ramblings, but eventually, I found a common thread in stories going back decades, even centuries. They called themselves the Children of the Deep, and their existence was hidden behind layers of myth and secrecy. They were older than any modern religion, their roots buried in the earliest days of human civilization. The cult believed in the overlords, beings they claimed were the original rulers of Earth. According to their texts, before humanity, this planet was ruled by these ancient, godlike creatures. They weren't beings of flesh and blood as we understand it. They were something else entirely, creatures of energy, metal, and something between matter and thought. For millennia, they thrived beneath the surface, shaping the Earth to their will. But something happened. Some ancient catastrophe banished them to another dimension, sealing them away. The cult believed this was a mistake. They believed humanity was an infestation, a usurper species, and it was their duty to bring the overlords back to reclaim their throne. For centuries, the cult operated in the shadows, spreading their doctrine, waiting for the right moment. And now they'd succeeded. I tried to warn people. I sent emails to newspapers, uploaded videos to social media, even tried going to the police. No one took me seriously. I was just another crank screaming about the end of the world. But then the disappearances started. First, no one noticed. It was the kind of people society overlooks, the homeless, addicts, drifters, people who disappear all the time. But then it escalated. Entire neighborhoods went quiet. Streets that had been alive with the sound of traffic and laughter were suddenly silent. The air itself felt different, heavier, colder. The skies above the city turned a dull, grayish green, as if the atmosphere was sick. And then came the first sightings. It started with tremors. Just a few at first, enough to rattle windows and unsettle the locals. But then the ground began to crack. Entire city blocks collapsed into sinkholes, and from those chasms came them. The overlords. No description can do them justice. Words fail to capture their sheer alienness, their impossible anatomy. They didn't move like living things should. Their forms twisted and shifted, their bodies constantly reshaping themselves. One moment they were towering masses of tentacles and spindly limbs. The next, they were crawling masses of eyes and screaming mouths. They were huge. Entire buildings crumbled beneath their weight as they emerged from the fissures. Their bodies gleamed with a strange mix of organic tissue and glistening metal. Tendrils extended from their forms, lashing out and pulling entire groups of people into their writhing, fleshy masses. But it wasn't just their size or their appearance that made them terrifying. It was their presence. Being near them was like standing next to a nuclear reactor about to explode. The air around them was charged with a pressure that made it hard to breathe. Just looking at them for too long made your head pound and your vision blur, as though reality itself was rejecting their existence. People ran, but there was nowhere to go. The overlords moved faster than anything that size should be able to. Their tentacles snatched up fleeing humans, dragging them toward their pulsating, gaping maws. But they didn't simply eat their victims. They absorbed them. I saw it happen. A man was grabbed by one of the overlords, a desperate office worker who had tripped as he ran. The tentacle wrapped around his waist and dragged him screaming into the creature's mass. He didn't just disappear. I watched as his body melted, his flesh dissolving into the overlord's skin, his face stretching and merging with its surface. For a moment, I could see his features twisted in agony before they disappeared entirely, absorbed into the creature's grotesque form. The city was chaos. Sirens blared, people screamed, and everywhere, the cultists chanted their praises to the overlords. They marched through the streets, dressed in their shimmering robes, dragging survivors toward the fissures as offerings. Some people fought back, but what were guns and fire against beings that defied physics? I hid. It was all I could do. I found a basement in an old building, locked the door, and prayed they wouldn't find me. From my hiding place, I could hear the world ending. The crunch of collapsing buildings, the wet, organic sound of the overlords consuming everything in their path. And underneath it all, the hum of the portal still open, still bringing more of them through. It's been 3 weeks since the invasion began. The world as we knew it is gone. Cities are empty husks, their ruins crawling with overlords. The survivors, what's left of us, live like rats, scavenging for food, hiding in the shadows. The cultists are still out there. They've declared themselves the rulers of this new world, serving their gods with fanatical devotion. They patrol the ruins, searching for survivors to sacrifice. And the overlords, they're evolving. I've seen it. They're not just consuming us. They're adapting to this world, growing stronger, more stable. They're becoming a part of the earth again, just like the cult always wanted. I don't know how much longer I can survive. Every day is a fight to stay hidden, to scavenge enough food and water to keep going. Every night, I dream of the portal, of the moment I could have stopped this but didn't. If you're hearing this, it means someone found my story. Maybe you'll be smarter than I was. Maybe you'll find a way to close the portal, to undo what's been done. But if the overlords are still here, if the cult is still out there, run, hide, pray, because they won't stop until every last one of us is gone. We thought they'd come from the sky. We thought we were ready, but we were wrong. They were already here.